Hey everybody! Well, I finally got an edge on this software, so I hope this all works. This is new, totally new for me, but I love learning, so we'll see how it works. But anyway, I have found some really interesting information that I want to share with you guys because this is very important to me. This is how I work. I believe in sharing the truth. And I don't think there's any room for fudging information when it comes to including the people, us. So just if you didn't see the first slide, I am running for president as a write-in. I know that's different, but there's a purpose in that, and I'll cover that in another video. But I just want to show you how I would work, because this is how we get manipulated and betrayed and used because of what I'm going to show you. And I think that we deserve, no, I don't think we do. I know we deserve better. We are the ones that are the important decision makers here, yet it usually doesn't turn out that way. So here we go. I'm going to go here and then okay, so we're starting here. All right, so here's what I want to show you. On March 6th, there was a bill that was passed called HR 6074, the Coronavirus Preparedness and Response Supplemental Appropriations Act of 2020. This was introduced to the House on March 4th, and let me just stop here and just say a couple of things, because having written legislation and have gone through the drafting process with the drafters, this is not just write a bill and here you go. This takes usually weeks, if not months, of planning, because it has to go back to drafting. They send it back. You have to make your changes. Then it goes back to drafting. They have to include also not only the language that you put, but they also have to check it against any other previous or current statutes. It all has to be incredibly, all your T's crossed and your I's dotted. It is not a simple process. So just keep that in mind, that it was introduced on March 4th by the House, which means it had to have been in preparation way before that. There's just no way that any bills, especially the bigger ones, can get passed, introduced and passed quickly without months of preparation, if not longer. So, and we're talking about our Congress. But here's the good news. All right, so it was introduced March 4th. It was passed by the House on the very same day, which I don't think I've ever heard of happening. Here is the roll call, and you've got your yays and your nays and those that didn't vote. But the vast majority of people voted for it, so you can just kind of get a rundown. And then there were 2 no's. So I always like to see, well, I wonder why they voted no. And the only one that I could find that was about this particular bill was Representative Buck. It was Congressman Biggs and Congressman Buck. And so let's see what Representative Buck, even though this was for the $8.3 billion spending package, it was for March 5th. So I am hoping or assuming that it was about HR 6074. And what he says is that he sees the coronavirus as being politicized. Totally right on. His problem was that the president's initial request was good, but the House passed something much bigger, and it's not outlined very well. and he feels like it's throwing money at a problem without adequate forethought. And basically, this is how our Congress and our governments do things: is they fix things. And so, here we are in a pandemic. Well, they've got to do something because we expect it. So it doesn't matter what's in it. Let's just give them something. Well, it matters, and I'm going to show you why. So let's go back to the actions again. And so the next day, it was passed on to the Senate, and lo and behold, they passed it in one day. And you have a list of senators. The vast majority said yeah. And there was one no, and that was Rand Paul. And I, of course, want to find out why. I always ask questions. Always ask questions, right? It used to drive my parents crazy, but it works for me now. All right, so here, look at this part right here. This part, this whole blip, okay? Because this is when he starts his testimony of what he feels like should be done. And he says, I think that we should not let fear or urgency cause us to lose our minds and act in an irresponsible fashion. I, for one, have looked at foreign aid over the years as welfare that we send to other countries that really is not particularly in our best interests anyway. If you follow foreign aid through the years, what you will find is that it goes from middle-class folks in rich countries to rich people in poor countries. And frankly, people enrich themselves at our expense. They steal our money. The Mubarak family in Egypt is now worth billions of dollars, which is skimmed off the top. And this goes on and on and on. Okay, the reason I love this is because this is what I've been saying forever. And he goes on to mirror what I would say as well. It's a good thing that I decided not to run for Congress anymore, because I'd be the lone duck along with Rand. Maybe we could get something done. But anyway, I love what he says down here. He goes, every day, people across the country are confronted with unexpected expenses. We budget and we plan, but things happen. When they do, we adjust and we plan accordingly. Sometimes we confront an expense that is not only unexpected, but is urgent, and that's where we find ourselves today. So he goes on to compare it like what we do every single day. Every single day we have budgets, we keep in our budget or we don't, and the consequences of that. What are those? Well, you either have to borrow money if you have an unexpected expense, or put it off, or whatever, but you have to deal with it. No one comes and bails you out. So I think that's an important piece. So if we go over here, it continues. So we have to ask ourselves whether it is really necessary to keep spending on wasteful things. If we don't consider this now, when will we ever consider this? We want an all hands on deck response. So we should be cutting out waste and moving those resources to something that is of more immediate concern. So he agrees that the coronavirus is an immediate concern, but he doesn't want to keep taking money from less urgent things and money that we're wasting and stolen by third world dictators, as he says right here. And he's just saying, let's use our money wisely. We have the money. We don't need to borrow more money. We just have to start setting our own priorities. For example, we shouldn't spend another dollar in developing a foreign economy this year. That spending should be stopped, and the money should be spent here to buy supplies, to help expedite research, and to support our communities. The funds I am proposing to keep at home have been used abroad for all kinds of unnecessary and wasteful things. So he goes on to give examples, things that I had no idea, which really set my little hairs on fire, because I'm a very big proponent of stewardship. And, if this is our money and we are paying it into our government to use wisely, it's not happening. We send U.S. dollars to fund kids from Pakistan to go to space camp in America. We spend money on combating student truancy in the Philippines. We have been funding the Peruvian Green New Deal. We actually send money to help deported illegal immigrants start up businesses in El Salvador. What business is it of the U.S. taxpayer to be funding small businesses in El Salvador for people who broke the law by trying to break into our country? It's insane. And I agree, it is. So he's saying we have the money. Oops, I lost my, oh, pooey. Okay. Sorry, guys, hold on. Okay, here we go. All right. The list doesn't stop there. Here we go. I don't know why we can't agree to spend this money on the coronavirus instead of spending it abroad. We spend over $50 billion a year in Afghanistan building their roads, building their schools, trying to create a nation where there really is no nation. We need to spend that money here at home. Besides, it's the law. Now, I say this on my site, actually, and it's we cannot take care of other people until we take care of our own. There's just no way. It's impossible. Now, this I want you to remember because it's going to come back up a little bit later. We have a law called pay-go, or pay as you go, which is supposed to require Congress to pay for new spending. It has been around for a couple of decades, yet we have broken the law thousands of times. What do? They see something they want. You know, they're kids in a candy store. They want to spend. They want to give you free money. So that just ignores the law. So what happens every year is that they exceed the pay as you go and they don't do the thing they're supposed to do, which is to offset this with a spending cut. Ha! I didn't know that. Then they just write a small little note in there reading that they have agreed to ignore the pay-go rules again, and that's what will happen in this case, and it does. I'll show you in a little bit. So we're going to go back up here. The other way they ignore the rules on the pay-go is that they declare things to be emergencies. So everything is an emergency. They say, well, what would we do if we didn't have this, if it weren't an emergency? Well, we're already spending billions of dollars and have spent billions of dollars over the years to prepare for epidemics. We fund the CDC and we fund the NIH. There's a lot of money out there. That's interesting. Once again, I'm not against giving additional money, but we should just make a decision. We should be mature people and say we are not just going to print up the money or borrow it from China. This is like a plethora of great information. But maybe we ought to take it from something less necessary. When we don't want to pay for new spending, we just simply waive these rules on pay-go. We declare the spending to be an emergency and we get around the requirement. That is how we have a $23 trillion debt. We actually borrow $2 million every minute. And then people say, well, we have to do something. People are running around acting crazy. We have to do something. Well, who's going to do something about the $23 trillion debt? And I'll tell you what, guys, I'm going to do another video on this, but you have to understand we are the ones who hold the bill. Not this bill. I mean, like all the money they spend, it's our debt. It's literally each and every one of our debt. We owe it. So it's like giving one of your children a credit card and not putting boundaries and they go, charge $10,000 in 3 days. That's what we're dealing with here. So do we not have 5 minutes to take a vote? In 15 minutes, we will be taking this vote. And people could simply vote and say that they are not going to borrow more money and that we will take the money from somewhere else in the budget that is less pressing. Mark my words, there is no fiscal responsibility up here among either party. It will be a small minority of us who will say that this funding should be offset by taking it from somewhere else in the budget. And I'm sorry, Rand, but you were the only person, and I appreciate you speaking up. In times of emergency, Congress scrambles to put together new spending, but we should be working just as hard to pay for the cost that comes with emergencies. Which is a higher priority, spending millions of dollars to stabilize the supply chain of medical supplies and treatment, on and on and on. Okay, so that's basically it for his testimony. Thank you so much for standing up and being one person who cares about the public and the onus that is put on us as far as how it's going to affect us. The great majority of our Congress doesn't see that. So I hope that you remember this when you go vote in November, that your representative voted yes for the most part. And choose somebody else, because they're going to continue to do it without anybody holding them accountable. All right, so here is the HR 6074 dialogue, which is fascinating because there are some things. We're getting a lot of doublespeak, folks. Lots of things that are being said, and then you got this behind the scenes, and you have to remember, this is law now. So, let's really pay attention to this. If you don't feel like it's not that big of a deal, I beg you to look at this yourself, research it, and make some other choices, because this is really up to us. All right. So anyway, all these people are saying, yes, please. We need to support this bill. And she goes on to slight the Trump administration, blah, blah, blah. And again, I am not saying one way or the other about anyone. I'm just saying you need to pay attention. And because we do not take the time to research, we do not take the time to learn, we do not take the time to read, we have a situation where we're being taken advantage of. And quite honestly, I can't blame them, because we haven't done our part. Now, I wouldn't work that way. I can't. It's one of my biggest pet peeves is for people to be taken advantage of, and because they don't know. I can't stand it. It hurts my heart. But we can't excuse ourselves. We're the ones who have fallen down on the job here, and we keep electing people who do the same thing over and over and over again, thinking that something's going to change. All right, so I'm going to pinpoint a couple of things here, and then I'm going to show you the real bill. So we have been told that, now remember too, this bill has had to have been in the works for weeks, if not months, prior to its introduction. So this is now law, and this is what we're heading for. So this money, this is different than the CARES Act. This is a whole different bill. This is actually the first bill that, again, nobody knows about. So $3 billion for research and development of vaccines. I thought that we were just talking about that. Nope, it's gonna happen. $300 million for the government to purchase vaccines at a fair and reasonable price. These people already know what's coming down the pike. And a lot of money for preparedness. And there's something even a little darker I haven't seen yet, but again, the loans, all that kind of interesting things, that's fine. Then Miss Granger speaks up here, says she's in favor of it. And again, it talks about how we need to help protect people all over the world. I totally agree. I want to help. I want to help more than anyone. I have a huge heart, and I'd love to help others. But we can't caretake at the expense of us. So she also says vaccines, pharmaceuticals, funds for the Food and Drug Administration. So they're still going to give everybody money, except us. So again, it just goes on and on. I'm just showing you how they talk about what is in the bill. And again, there's a lot of information that talks about preparing vaccines as well as making sure that they are affordable when they do come on the market. Okay, so enough of that. Let's go to the main bill. So here it is. I put it in a PDF so we could read it a little bit better. So this says, those are about loans. Now I want to point out at the end of each paragraph, it says, just as Rand Paul was talking about it, it's all designated by Congress as an emergency requirement pursuant to this particular act. So they're doing what they need to do, but are they? Okay, here is an interesting word. Surveillance. I'm going to do a whole video on this, but boy, did I go down some rabbit holes. And remember, this was done at the early part of March and was drafted way before then. So this isn't new. It wasn't in respect to the outbreak that suddenly just took off. This was before we all were locked down, or the majority of us were locked down. Okay, so remember he also said that they've been given money for a preparedness fund for years. So they ought to have plenty of money. I'm not sure why they don't. Now, this is interesting. So these funds can be used for the construction, alteration, or renovation of non-federally owned facilities to improve preparedness and response capability at the state and local levels. These funds may also be used to purchase and also purchase insurance of official motor vehicles in foreign countries. That's interesting. I'm not sure why we need that. Okay, that's to help our front line. That's good. But here we go. Look how many times this one word, this V word, bad V word, is used. Oops, I just left. But you can see as I highlight it, I mean, it's all about it. So do not think that it's all Bill Gates. It's not. I'm sorry, but you need to know the truth. We are already screwed. They're developing vaccines. Now, Gates might have a different idea as far as everybody being vaccinated, but I doubt it. And I just need for those of it, for you thinking that people in our current regime are for the truth around this, because this was signed March 6th. Now, either he didn't know what he was signing, he had been given bad intel, or he knows. But either way, it doesn't matter. We're the ones who are going to have to live in this type of world. And I don't want to. I'm seeing if there's any. Oh, here's another one. So again, you can see that. Oh, and this is interesting. This talks about, remember up above, the construction, alteration, or renovation of non-federally owned facilities. Well, this is, let's just buy what we need to make these vaccines. They're going to need a lot of space, it sounds like. Oh, and the other thing is, look, goes for a long while. So this isn't just a short-term deal. All right, here again, the V word. And it really doesn't matter whether you are for or question vaccines. At this time, it doesn't matter. This is about all of us. So you need to decide if that's how you want your freedoms treated, because it now applies to you. Okay, so it goes on and on and on. You can see that there's a lot of talk about vaccines and medical equipment, therapeutics, so all of this is about trying to treat the disease so it doesn't spread. But, I think differently, guys. I am a natural health provider. I'm a chiropractor. I know that there are other choices that we can make to keep our immune system strong. And it's nice to have things as a last resort, but just to say again that one size fits all and everybody has to do it is a very dangerous, slippery slope. Okay. All right. So it goes on and on and on. I won't, and you can go read this on your own, but I doubt people will because it scares people. There's a lot of language that doesn't make sense. Let me just see if there's anything. And then the transfer of funds is like any of these other funds that are allocated to certain other expenses. That's okay. We'll just mix them and match them as we need to. That's what that basically says. But looky. All right, here we go. Maybe not yet. There we go. Okay, budgetary effects. Whoa, look! Statutory PAYGO scorecards. The budgetary effects of this division shall not be entered on either PAYGO scorecard, maintained pursuant blah blah blah. So there they go. It's like doesn't count. We're not gonna act like we are doing anything past what we should be. Senate. The budgetary effects of this division shall not be entered on any PAYGO scorecard, maintained blah blah blah. So that's what you have, folks. You have a government that is spending our money willy-nilly without any accountability nor care of how it's going to leave us, our children, anybody that comes after our children. We're leaving a huge legacy of debt, and that is a horrible feeling to have when you have a lot of debt. You just can't get out of it, and so therefore it helps keep you under, it keeps you controlled, it keeps you depressed, because it just doesn't seem like there's any way out. But there is. But it requires each and every one of us to do something different and see this as our own personal issue. We can't just allow any more people to make decisions for us like a parent would a child, because that's how we're going to be treated as children. And that's how we are being treated right now, children. And a lot of us don't like it. But to get out of that, we've got to make different decisions and be responsible for electing people who reflect what we want to see happen We can't go back and change the past, but we can be really clear on where do we want to go. And that's the kind of person then we need to elect. Has nothing to do with party, has nothing to do with he's my best bud or she's my best bud and I've known her for years and so I need to elect, or electing someone who has dropped out. I actually have people who say they're still going to vote for people that have dropped out because they've supported them for years. Their vote won't count. But that's why I'm running as a write-in. And I'm going to do a whole different video on this. I don't want to get into it. But your vote actually counts. So please do your research. Look at what I've shown you. Realize that we are being lied to. And that is a bitter pill to swallow. But we've got to see that and take different measures. So again, thank you so much for taking the time. I've got to look at my cheat sheet because I have to see how to stop this. Okay, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free. Please don't leave comments like that are derogatory. I'm just going to erase them. Why is that helpful? How is that helpful? You don't even know me. And if you're angry, deal with your anger. If you're upset, be with it. Heal it. If you're frustrated, again, it's yours. It's your feeling. It doesn't deserve to be thrown at someone else so you can feel better. So again, that's one way that we can help to take responsibility for things because we do have feelings. This is a very difficult time, but it's not someone else's fault. The more that we blame, the more we're going to keep digging ourselves a hole to be in. And it's going to be difficult to dig ourselves out. So anyway, thank you so much, and I will see you again. Bye.